The Israeli Security Cabinet approved Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's controversial plan to, quote, take over Gaza City. This comes as international uproar for the humanitarian crisis in Gaza reaches unprecedented levels. Here to give an official report is Israeli Consul General Israel Bachar. So, my friend, what can you tell us about this plan that was just approved?
The plan that was approved in the cabinet, its number one goal, there's two main goals for it. One, it's not to take or occupy the Gaza City. The idea is to do an operation, an army operation that's going to dismantle Hamas strongholds, and by doing so to create pressure on Hamas to come to the table and negotiate a hostage release. We are not going to occupy Gaza in the sense of occupation. We're doing an army raid, an army operation to neutralize its strongholds. So for Israel, the idea is that after we succeed with this operation, we're going to transfer the ability to govern the Gaza City to any Arab nation and moderate Arab nations and other Arab forces who are willing to govern Gaza. And that's the plan behind the scene. Israel does not want to govern Gaza. That's one. Two, the cabinet made a decision to make sure that before we start the operation, we're going to call to the people who live in the Gaza City to leave the city to a safe zone. And in those safe zones, they're going to get water, food, medical treatment, and only then the operation is going to start.
Well, that actually comes to, I think, maybe the most pressing question. You know, we get a lot of comments, a lot of people that are honestly, frankly, confused. They don't know where to look for accurate information. And I think it's just very valuable to have you on to give an official report, which is this. And this isn't not an exhaustive list, but you hear things like Israel is starving people. There's a genocide happening. Israel, the IDF is indiscriminately shooting at civilians, at aid centers. There's a lot of accusations being thrown about what Israel is doing in Gaza. So if you could, from an official perspective, what's the reality from your vantage point of what's happening with the humanitarian crisis in Gaza?
Raj, let me tell you something very simple. I believe in God, and I believe the truth is the best tool that we have. So here are the facts, and here is the truth. One, there are logistical problem to distribute food inside Gaza, but the problem occurs not because of Israel, but because of Hamas or UN agencies who are not helping to distribute the food efficiently. That's number one. Number two, Israel does not limit the food quantity that get into Gaza. There is no limit, no cap. They can get as much as they want food into Gaza and distribute it evenly in the north and the south. Mostly the problems are in the northern side of Gaza, where the UN agency are the one that's responsible to distribute the food. On the southern part of Gaza, that's where the GHF, which is Israel and America, which America financed part of it, distributing food in the southern part of Gaza, and there's no problems. Third, Hamas systematically disrupt the aid distribution because Hamas wants to control the Gazan people by holding the food distribution. So what we are trying to do with America and with other agencies is to separate between the Gazan people and this terrorist organization. By doing so, we're going to allow them a better life that they do not need to bow to a terrorist organization. So that's the reality on the ground. So if you look at the quantities, the food tons that got into Gaza since the beginning of the war, we're talking about 2 million tons of food. It's equivalent to almost 100,000 trucks loaded of food, huge trucks, those semi-trailers. So the issue more, it's not a quantity, it's the distribution failures and the mechanism that spreads the food within Gaza Strip. So Israel offered, and here is another point everybody needs to know. Israel offered repeatedly the UN agency to secure the routes of the convoys, so Hamas is not going to loot those trucks. So what happens is right now, and that's an official statistics by the UN, 88.7% of the convoys, of the UN agency convoys, are being looted by Hamas or diverted to Hamas distribution centers, or not exactly distribution center, because mostly what they do, they resell this humanitarian aid to its own people. And by doing so, they profit from the reselling of the food. And that's brought Hamas $500 million income in 2024. Taking this money, my last sentence, Raj, taking this money, they use this money to pay terrorists to continue to fight Israel and to continue to control with operatives with brutality against their own people in Gaza.
So what should folks at home do when they see images of starving people in Gaza?
Well, I think, Raj, there's an outrage in Israel about those photos because we all, as Israeli, grew up with a strong knowledge and conscious about the Holocaust in Germany. So when we see pictures like this, of a 24 years old Eviatar in the dungeon of Hamas with lack of food after he lost half of his weight, people are furious and people want to win against the brutality of Hamas. There is no way that in the year of 2025 can be a reality that Israel is being held in Gaza among terrorists and people are suffering and not being released. So the international community needs to put pressure, utmost pressure, on Hamas to release the hostages immediately. And the fact that they are not doing so, that's the reason the Israeli cabinet decided last night to go into Gaza to make sure that, one, to release the hostages, and two, to pressure Hamas to do so as soon as it's possible. We want to negotiate a deal. If not going to be a deal, we're going to run after them, hunt them, and make sure that Hamas is not in power.
So I think you did a great job of underlying the logistics of the entire situation and the complexities of it. I think maybe a more pressing question would be, people see starving kids on their social media and they don't know how to process that. And so obviously all the international news is putting this at Israel's doorstep, saying this is your fault. Look at these images of starving kids. How would you respond to the emotional side that have, a lot of people that would like to support Israel, questioning what's the truth if there are, in fact, starving children in Gaza?
Okay, so first and foremost, Israel doesn't have a policy of starvation, period. America is monitoring the situation, and America is working with us hand by hand to make sure that there is no lack of food in Gaza. So we don't have this kind of policy. By the way, historically, if you check history, Israel is the only nation that supplies food to its enemy. It was never done in history. There's no any nation in history that did it, but we do it. So that's our policy and that's our values. Second, about the photographs that you asked. Many of the photographs is of sick kids who has medical issues. And these photos were manipulated and were sent by the way, mostly by a specific Turkish news agency that was found by the Bild newspaper in Germany, that most of their photographs are or fake or staged or belongs to kids who have medical issues, unfortunately. And here is another fact. Israel allowed 10,000 people to leave Gaza and go and get a medical treatment in Jordan, in UAE, or in Europe. We do not hold any sick people inside Gaza. Vice versa. We wanted to get a treatment, medical treatment, and getting better. So there is clearly a manipulation, an emotional manipulation against people in the West, against Israel, by different news agencies. One of them is the Turkish agencies and other agencies that manipulate it. It's been staged many times. I'm not saying there's not difficulties in Gaza. There are difficulties in Gaza. There are people, unfortunately, who suffer in Gaza, but because of Hamas. It's not because of Israel. Israel do provide food constantly and does not limit the cup of food that can get into Gaza. But there is a battle. between Hamas, who wants to control the citizen and the distribution of food, and Israel was trying to separate between the combatants and the non-combatants. And that's what we're trying to do with America together, day by day. America announced just this week that we're going to increase the amount of food distribution centers inside Gaza from 8 distribution centers to a minimum of 8 distribution centers. It's going to be mostly open also in the northern side of Gaza to make sure that there is enough flow of humanitarian aid. But it's a constant battle with a terrorist organization who is manipulating. He's doing a good job on it, I must admit, but that's not the truth.
Well, again, I appreciate you coming on and facing these questions. Maybe my last question would be this. I don't know if it's more of a question as more of an opportunity for you to speak, which is, a lot of people accuse us of here at CBN News of being too willing to show the Israeli side of the story. We get called lots of names for simply having people like you on. But I think it's important to at least allow people like yourself to have their perspective heard. So maybe my last question is this. Let's say you do have a large international audience watching you now, but let's specifically talk to those in the West, obviously here in the United States. There is and you just mentioned it, a war, a PR war that's being, let's call a spade, lost right now. And people don't know what's true, what's false. You've done an admirable job of coming on here and explaining the reality from your perspective. But what would your message be? What would you want to tell someone who's just really upset about seeing all of these images, seeing the suffering, and they don't know what to do, but they're watching you right now and they just want to hear your side of the story, your message. So maybe less from a logistical standpoint and more from you, Israel Consul General. What is your message to the American people?
I think that the Israeli people has the highest moral ground the way we conduct the war in Gaza. But do not see any other nation that suffered what we suffered on October 7th, the massacre, the horrible massacres of our people in our communities. And after we launched the army campaign to make sure that Hamas is not going to redo October 7th again against our communities, Israel is conducting the war with high moral grounds, with obeying every international law clause that you have in the warfare. And we're making sure, as much as we can, that non-combatants are not going to be in harm's way. And therefore, we are conducting a war for almost 2 years. We do it gradually, incrementally, to try to make sure that people are in a separate safe zone as much as we can. But the truth is, there is a vicious terror organization, very sophisticated, who is willing to use its own people and making sure that in their philosophy, the more people who died in Gaza, it's better for this terrorist organization cause. They believe it's bring international pressure against Israel, which it does, and therefore they advance their cause. That's what they believe. So for people who want to know the truth, please do listen to the American official. Please go on our X, which is COGAT. You can get all the statistics, official statistics, on a daily basis. How much food is getting into Gaza, which countries help to distribute food in Gaza, what's the medical situation, what is the water situation, how many air pallets were dropped every day. And you will see that there is a massive coordinated effort by Israel and America to make sure that every Palestinian in Gaza who is a non-combatant can have its basic needs and will be able to feed his kids. So that's what we're trying to do. So I believe if somebody has humanity in his bones, in his belief, the only criticism needs to come on, it's against terrorist organization, which is Hamas. Hamas is the one that makes the most suffer to the Palestinian people. It is not America, it is not Israel, and it's not the West.
Well, Israeli Consul General Israel Bachar, Toda Rabah, and Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.